of you, and we'll today start. There are three more topics left with respect to the Indian society, and those are tomorrow I'll be winding up with the Indian society lectures, and then you would be handholded by some other respectful faculty who would be taking their respective courses, and we'll progress ahead with that. Three more topics are left with respect to Indian society. One is social empowerment. With that, I'll connect the women empowerment concept, that is women and women organizations. And second topic is urbanization, and the last one being the globalization and its impact on Indian society. Today I'll be completing the globalization, social empowerment and women, and tomorrow I'll be taking up the urbanization and globalization and its impact as of. Uh, let's first look into what is the meaning of social empowerment. I'll go in depth with respect to the topic of women and social empowerment after breaking down the exact meaning of what empowerment could be. Let's see. Today I'll be using a PPT here. What's the meaning of empowerment? I've added the word woman here so that directly the woman and empowerment topic can be connected, and you don't have to, place the term with empowerment. Woman empowerment is a process which enhances women's ability to change those structures and ideologies which keeps them subordinated. The two key points here to be noted is empowerment, be that woman empowerment or tribal empowerment or any other forms of empowerment of a given social groups, be that transgenders or other vulnerable sections of your society, which you often study in social justice in paper 2. Whatever be the group, empowerment would always be a process which enhances the ability of that respective group to change the structures and also the ideologies which keeps them often subordinated. So any empowerment consists of two things: where the group is capable enough or the capabilities are developed within those groups to change those structures, and also the group has developed the capacities to counter those ideologies which have kept them subordinated. For example, if the lower caste have developed a capacity to counter the justifications prevalent within the caste system, that would again be considered as a process where they are having the new ideologies to counter existing traditional orthodox ideologies which subordinated them. Therefore, any empowerment would have two aspects attached to it: the structural change and the ideological change. In simple terms, ability to take decisions for themselves and for others is called as empowerment. When do you say that any person is empowered or not? For that matter, if you have to evaluate whether women are empowered, whether tribals are empowered, or whether differently enabled people are empowered in Indian society or not, that completely hinges on whether those groups are able to take decisions for themselves and the people they are surrounded with. For example, in the context of women, if I see, if the woman is having ability to take decisions for herself, what job to do, when to marry, with whom to marry, or with respect to the decisions, interactions present, and also when she's able to take decisions for the people who are surrounding her, like if she's married, her children, she's also having a capacity to take decisions not just with respect to her own self or individual identities, but she's also having a potential to take decisions for the people, for the child which she has given birth to. Therefore, empowerment is a process where people are have developed capacities to take decisions for themselves and also for the others which they live their life with. Economic Survey 2016 has also defined women empowerment. And what is the definition which it has given? If you just remove woman out of it, this can become a beautiful definition for your empowerment. It is a process in which women increases their choices and gains freedom to participate, first keyword, negotiate, and influence and hold accountable institutions that affect their life. Therefore, it's a process where people develop freedom to participate, negotiate, and influence and hold accountable those institutions which impacts them or which affects their life. Therefore, all in all, if you see all the three meaning, one meaning which commonly runs, or the crux or the core of the essence which runs common through all these three different meanings given here is empowerment would always be with respect to freedom and capacities. If you look into nature of women, diversified group, it's not a homogeneous group. In India, women is not a homogeneous group, it's more or less an extremely diversified group. Divided on the basis of that diversity can be seen in the context of class, caste, ethnicity, language, region, religion, etc. Women are divided on varieties of categories, and all of those categories of women would have different way of life, different structures, different ideologies, different belief systems, different value patterns, and different interaction patterns radiating out of these socialization aspects. Since women are not homogeneous, the problem faced by them are diversified. And it's quite obvious that if the woman is a diversified group, then all the women belonging to different categories would have definitely faced different categories of problem. Their problems cannot, although there would there would be certain common problems like that. Patriarchy is one of the common problem faced by, in fact, any category of women. But beside that, there are certain specific problems which would be faced by specific women. Take that for an example. The lower caste woman would not only become a victim of patriarchy, but she'll also become the victim of caste identities. A poor woman would not only become the victims of caste identity or patriarchal identities if she is belonging to a lower caste, but she would also become victim of poverty or class aspirations or identities. So some women can face multiple deprivations. Some women can face degree of deprivations present among these women may be less in certain categories of women, but overall, yes, there are certain common aspects, problems, challenges faced by women, but saying that only these are the challenges would largely help or would largely narrow down our understanding of the challenges faced by women because of their respective regions and religions. Some recent incidents I have written in past 1.5 to 2 years, there are certain incidents which have taken place, which shows that what is the contemporary position of women. Many times a misconception is created. Okay, Sri Jayalalita became chief minister, Sri Mayawati became chief minister, Sri Mamata Banerjee became chief minister, Sri Sushma Swaraj became that minister or this minister. They are just an extreme exceptions. In reality, when you go to the positions of women in the society, you would often witness that majority of the women are becoming victims of deprivations rather than largely getting the privileges. There are very rare exceptions where only some woman becomes exceptionally powerful, having an absolute degree of mobility. And if these examples are largely quoted to motivate the women, that's good enough. But showing that these women have reached here, therefore the woman empowerment has taken place, or the women in Indian society have been empowered, that would only give us a falsified narration and picture, which would not be, it would technically not be a justice to the positions of women, and it may hamper or deter the empowerment process which is taking place in the Indian society. What are those incidents? Look at how the women are actually becoming victims of extreme sets of biasness and deprivations. Contractors and Beed is a place in Maharashtra, stopped hiring women cane cutters as their opinion women who menstruate are likely to take breaks from work and hence be less productive. Just because of one biological aspect which often our women in the world face. Because of that, there are certain employers who have stopped hiring women because it is believed that they would be often taking breaks because of their biological or nature's call, and that would definitely create a hurdle for their productivity. And as a result of which, what happened, as a result of above, many women in Beed have gone for hysterectomies, matlab largely removing their uterus, so that at least their employment can be ensured. Now the point is not this. The point is these women who were hired by these contractors, they were not exceptionally paid in lakhs or crores. They were paid menial wages. And if even for the menial wages, the women are taking an extreme decisions here, taking risk with their own bodies, hormonal changes, or maybe hampering the very prospectus of their family building. In that circumstances, it is clear that Sushma Swaraj or our present president or our different chief ministers, they are not representing the true reality of Indian society. In reality, even this may be an exception, just like the other, president and chief ministers are exceptions. Reality lies in between. Some becomes victim of extreme deprivation, some becomes victims of, some largely enjoys extreme privileges. In between there lies the combinations and fight and conflict of privileges and deprivations, which a normal woman goes through in her day-to-day life in the modern Indian society. What are the various issues faced by the woman? So first I'll discuss the issues part of women, then I'll go to the empowerment part, so that you can connect that social empowerment meaning which we have discussed in a just before a few seconds or few minutes back. Since women are not homogeneous, the problem faced by them are obviously diversified. They face issues of gender inequality in various spheres. Now, what are the various forms of gender inequality which they often come across in their entire life cycle? These are some of the bases or segments where women often become the victims of their gender identities. Oxfam 2019 report says the face of inequality in India is gender. This statement of Oxfam is very important, as many of our politicians in recent times have often advocated that the empowerment of women is a reality in India. Even Economic Survey 2015 and 16 says that empowerment of women have already taken place in the Indian society. But in reality, if you see this report, which starts with the same line, that in inequality, there are different forms of inequalities which exist in India, but often we see that the face of inequality in India is gender. That is the most visible inequality in India, which one can see by bare minimum eyes, is the gender inequality which is present. Now let's see every issue here in detail and then connect it with the process of empowerment which is largely present in the society. I'll provide you this PPT. There are certain aspects which I've written down here as a content enrichment statements for respective topic. Women in India lag behind men in all social dimensions or human development indexes. I've given some examples: sex ratio, life expectancy, skill, education, well-paid jobs, wages, permanency, etc. Let's first see the issue of identity. So first, I will see every issue here, and then we'll go to economic survey, and then we'll go to social empowerment. What are the issues of identity which a woman normally faces in Indian society? Women are identified by their father's and husband's name. Yes, to an extent, this is clear. The recent series of Panchayat can also be an elaboration of this, where we often see the concepts of Panchpati or surrogate representatives, where the women are now fighting elections because of the compulsory reservation present in the local governance systems of municipalities and Panchayati Raj institutions. But however, they often act as a surrogate representatives of their respective father, brother, or husband. Therefore, in reality, their identity is determined on the basis of the identity of husband or father. Women are not born women, they are made women. This is a statement given by Simon de Beauvoir, where women are not born women, they are often made women. What exactly it means is the identity of woman is not on the basis of its birth. Over a period of time, this family, the society socializes the woman in such a manner, which shows that how women often largely develop certain way of life which has been inculcated into their mindsets through society. The very good examples here is many of my students here who are girls would, if they are listening to this, they would often see that how to sit, how to eat, how to dress, how to talk, what's their manner. If you see this socialization process, the process of woman is very different when compared to the process in which the boy is socialized in a society. And this process of socialization often creates these identities that I am a girl, I am a woman, I am a boy, I am a man. Examples are Panchpati, surrogate representatives, which I have quoted here to justify the statements and points which I have often made. Women internalize the structures that binds them to their own oppressions, and hence women inherit several tenets of patriarchy under the grip of choice. This is the explanation for this second statement. That many times, many women are socialized in such a manner that over a period of time, they start considering these patriarchal structures as their protection systems. You have seen many movies like Kerala Stories and others where women themselves advocate the hijab is for their protections. Maybe it could be for their protections, it could be a choice that woman is wearing hijab because of her own choice rather than being imposed by the different ulemas or fatwas. But yet, if you go deep down, what we see is many such why woman considers hijab as a protection, because maybe since the birth that socialization has been taken down, that hijab has been equated to protection, and because of this long process of socializations, sorry, the women themselves starts accepting, yes, hijab is for their protection. Therefore, technically what we are seeing here is the identity of woman is still something which is dependent upon not her own merits. The identities of woman either comes out of her gender, beauty, or either it is determined on the basis of their counterparts, husband or father. Women in India believes in feminism, not feminism. This was a statement present in Indian Express paper once upon a time. I copied this statement. So whatever content is present in box, that is an add-on content. You can largely make a note of this so that it can enhance the visibility of your answers. So as far as identity is concerned, we have seen that positions of women is secondary somewhat. What about the aspects of education? What is the situation of women with respect to accessing education and using their respective educations? Leela Dubey, there is a statement which she says, educating a girl child is watering the neighbor's plant. The statement itself shows the positions of women with respect to the relationship of women with respect to education in India. In India, still many consider the education of a girl child largely is like watering the neighbor's plant, where the benefits of this education would largely be derived by the in-laws. And as a result, many of the families do not educate their own daughters. Why? Well, they will not derive any benefits out of it. The money which she would be earning tomorrow after when she enters into the work sphere, because of the education provided, that money would be more or less used by the in-laws as she would be married at a particular age. Early marriages due to stress on sexual purity and prevalence of dowry has also hampered the access to education. For example, there is a fact. UNICEF says 27% of girls in India are married before the age of 18 years. There's another fact of National Family Health Survey which we'll come across in this particular discussion. In 2019, 40% of girls between 15 and 18 dropped out of school due to help in housework. Look at these two statements, these two facts, and you'll find one thing. There are certain cultural factors which hampers the access of education, and there are certain factors which largely hampers the continuation of education present among the women. European Union in 2012 started a project called as Science a Woman's Thing. Why? I have highlighted three issues here. First, the women's education is not preferred. Second, the woman's largely is not going for education or not allowed to education because of certain cultural aspects. And third, even if she goes to education, she becomes an early dropout because of the duties which is often imposed on women, where she should be learning the household work, because that is considered as a primary requirement for Indian women in order to get married. The last point here is talking about, even if woman is allowed in education, even if the woman continues her education, we often see that education system is compartmentalized in India on the basis of gender lines. And what's that? The women are allowed to education and may continue the education for a longer span of time, but the type of education which she would be choosing is determined on the basis of her gender. You often come across many and varieties of examples that women chooses a specific categories of education like home sciences. Yes, I'm not saying that all the women would be going for home science education today, but even when she goes for engineering, she will not be going for mechanical engineering. She more or less goes for computer science engineering, engineering, or some sort of those engineerings. Maybe at the end, it's the personal choice of a girl. But why that? I mean, can there be any social reason behind this? Yes, there are certain social reasons, where we often see that the mechanical engineering involves different types of, work with the machines, which often requires physical strength. And many times the women are largely considered as a physically weak, and they often largely are imbibed with such a mentality that they themselves choose computer science engineering over a period of time. Almost all these factors clearly shows that most of the women are going to social science, not to science. And in order to largely increase the representations of women in science, European Union started a project called as Science a Women's Thing, that science is something which women can do better. The same sort of project also has taken place in India in different forms of schemes like Madame Curie schemes, STEM science, where there where the goal is to promote the women's participation in the STEM sciences. Identity and education both have become clear that the woman's position looks like secondary as far as these two aspects in Indian societies are concerned. But what with respect to jobs, there is a glorified, in fact, inequality between genders as far as the economic and employment of a society of ours is concerned. Look at the facts. You need not use the names which I've written, that is for your general knowledge. Sociology, pol science, and anthropology, if you have any such subjects, then you can use these names here. But try not to use these names as far as Indian society is concerned or GS is concerned. The first aspect, secondary position of women in employment, can be seen from all these factors. The first one, Barron and Norris talks about domination of women in secondary market. According to Barron and Norris, there are two types of market present. Labor market can be divided into two, primary and secondary. Primary occupations are those occupations which are well paid. Secondary occupations, on the other hand, are those occupations which are underpaid. They are not important, competent occupations. They are occupations which are largely supplementing the primary occupations, assistant and all those things, clerical jobs. Look at the fact. 63% of the workforce in India with respect to women is employed in agriculture. Majority of the women, out of 100 women, 63 out of 100 women who are working, 63 are working in agrarian sectors. Look at rosemary. There is a concept of pinkification. This can be a question in your GS as well. Remember this. It's not just a deep sociological concept, but it could be a very strong aspect which can largely come in GS paper 1. No, sir, such question often do not come. Then I'll give you an example. I think 2014, there was a question, feminization of agriculture in India. This point also proves that. Now, what is pinkification? Pinkification refers to pink collar jobs. That means certain jobs are considered as women specific, and that should be performed by women. So women were allowed in the economic sphere, but they were not allowed in every economic activity. Rather than their allowance was only made in certain jobs which are considered as pink collar jobs. That indicates that even if when woman works outside, she participates in economic activity, that doesn't mean that she is empowered. We need to understand whether the woman is working in a secondary job, primary job, or whether she is largely still bound to perform or to largely get herself involved in pink collar jobs, which pink collar jobs are those jobs which are considered as women specific jobs. For example, hospitality industries, primary teachers. These are certain segments where women are often preferred, not the men. Third point, high educated unemployment among women. This is a serious problem, and there are multiple causes for this. Let's take an example. The fact which is given here is 48% of women in India are highly educated, but they are unemployed. Now, what could be the reason for this? One economic reason could be here that they may not be sufficiently skilled. Yeah, there is a possibility because only 4% of women have any vocational skills. But beyond that, if we have to evaluate this from a larger perspective, what could be the reasons? One important reason for why high unemployment, educated unemployment exists among women is that after getting a education, a woman, when she enters into job, the wages which she gets for the same type of work performed by men at the same level is less. And now the woman is not ready to work for less, and hence she opts out of job rather than working for under wages. This could be another reason. Another important reason could be that the woman's over a period of time, maybe she may be working today, but tomorrow there would be an expectation to have a family. And women themselves may also support this, okay, at a particular period of time, I need to quit my job. And that is not something which is forced. That could be by choice as well. But yes, There are many compulsions. Many times we often see that after a period of time when the family's position has improved, the woman is expected to leave the job, not the men who is expected to leave the job. This has created another reason which has given rise to high unemployment among women. The next point you see domestic domination in domestic work, which is also unpaid. Women's sorry, the women's often are doing a lot of labor, but that labor is unpaid, as woman is largely expected to carry the work back home. She has to do the domestic work beside working outside if she is working. 12% representation of women in Lok Sabha and 3.4% in Supreme Court. That means the most constitutional bodies in our own country still shows no gender parities. They only talk about gender parities. Supreme Court has given many decisions with respect to gender parities, but Supreme Court has never looked in its own gireban or in its own basis that their representation in the Supreme Court is also extremely single digit. National Sample Survey Organization, only 3.4% of women in India have gone for vocational training. Matlab, again, the skilling among the women is less, which may also result in high unemployment. Amartya Sen, what he says, involvement of women paid employment results in less anti-female biasness. This statement of Amartya Sen shows us that suppose if these things changes, there would be a dramatic change, not just in the economic empowerment of women, but it would also bring social changes like that of anti-female biasness would reduce. Beena Agarwal, lack of ownership of property is the single most factor affecting women empowerment in India. Last two statements of Beena Agarwal and Amartya Sen shows that economic empowerment, if the woman's position in the economics is improved, there would be synergic effect on the entire society. Beena Agarwal's statement clearly shows that if woman is not economically empowered, there is no possibility of largely socially empowering women, as economic empowerment remains one very strong basis to ensure overall empowerment and well-being of women. All women are working women. It is just that some are paid, some are not. You can use this in your essay writings. Coming to the third issue which is faced by women. First issue was of identity, second was of education, third was in economics. In all the three segments, we have seen on the factual grounds what is the position of women in contemporary time with respect to Indian society. Now let's look into, is culture contributing to any gender inequality in Indian society with respect to positions of women? The culture largely has created such a mindset where the women are largely expected to focus on home, him, and her. Our mindsets, the socialization process in any society is strongly impacted by the culture prevalent in these societies. And as a result, we see the culture often socializes women that she should look good, she should focus on her husband, and she should largely focus on the home in which she is living. This many times never consists of that woman should focus on herself as well. As far as herself focus is concerned, it's only the beauty or bodily beauty which is often stressed, clearly glorifying the commodification of women. Second, Malvika Kelkar gave a concept of Devi Dasi dichotomy. What does it mean? She advocates that if woman adheres to the principles of culture, follows culture, then she would be considered Devi. But if the woman questions culture or negates the cultural value systems and goes against it as far as the behavior and mindsets are concerned, then she would be treated as Dasi. Dasi here indicates she would become a victim of violence. Coming further, women are born from the ribs taken from men. Such are the principles mentioned in the Christianity as far as the Bible is concerned. This statement is specifically written to prove your point that there are many cultural aspects radiating out from religion mentioned in the sacred documents and text, which shows that woman is considered as inferior to men. The third one, culture in India is also leading to early marriages. Look at the Family Health Survey 4 survey. National Family Health Survey 4 data. 31% of married women are married before age of 18 years. Earlier in the slide, UNICEF said 27%. National Family Health Survey says 31%. Suppose if we take an average, at least somewhere 30% of women can certainly be considered as the women who got married before the age of 18. Now, why this marriage was performed? because of the culture largely enforcing such a norms with respect to women in Indian society. Further, culture has also played an important role in restricting the mobility of women. Many times, the culture does not allow women to go outside and work, does not allow education, consider her position as subordinated. Third, the last point is there to prove the point which I made, culture restricts women. The best example is prohibition of rituals. Many times women are not allowed to perform certain categories of rituals. Sabrimala is an example I have used here. Shani Shingnapur or Haji Ali could be other examples here, where many of these cultural and religious belief systems often largely do not allow women in their respective sanctum, sanctorium or premises. Over a period of time, temple entry movement was spearheaded in India, where we see that Supreme Court finally passed a judgment that the woman should be allowed in these temples, as it is a violation or a glorified violation of Article 14, which went untethered from past 75 years. So fine, there are issues which women face with respect to identities, with respect to culture, with respect to education, with respect to employment. What about the woman's position with respect to their respective health in society? Is the woman in India healthy enough to sustain a healthy Indian society? Look at some of the facts. Amartya Sen coined a term called as natal inequality. Now, this is what? According to Amartya Sen, a woman does not only become a victim of inequality after birth, a woman becomes a victim of inequality even before a birth, where we often see that before birth, the sex selective abortions have often led to natal inequality in society, where the boys are preferred over girls. Second, the maternal mortality rate is extremely high in Indian society, which again is radiated from the aspects like that of son preferences, etc., pushing women towards a more threatening delivery of a child or threatening the health of women or life during the pregnancies, or it is during the lactating phase. Forced pregnancies again is pretty much common in Indian society, where women many times are forced to become pregnant, as the use of contraceptives are often not many times justified by the various religious ideologies, and woman is forcefully made pregnant. Next, girl child is breastfed for a lesser period of time when compared to a boy child. This further shows that not only this, we are also having such a mindset towards girl child. This was a fact taken from Kurukshetra somewhere around in 16 and 17, year 2016 and 17. If Kurukshetra mentions this, this can certainly show us that a girl child is discriminated at such a level that many times breastfeeding of a boy child is given for a higher time when compared to a girl child, provided obviously when both the children are having a gap of maybe 1 year or something like that. All these factors further glorify that culture has been one of the primary factors responsible for subordination of women in Indian societies, as varieties of patriarchal mindsets have often been supported by culture. In fact, I'll just give you one statement. All the religions fight among themselves, but as far as the women are concerned, all the religions are united. All religions have subordinated their respective women. ऐसा कोई धर्म नहीं है जहां पे नारी को बराबर रखा गया है. As far as my knowledge is concerned, I have not come across. Many says that Buddhism is one such religion which is more equal, inspired from the Ambedkar's writing. If anybody of you are interested in Study IQ's YouTube channel, I have made a complete analysis of how Buddhism is also having gender inequality present in this. I have quoted all the Pitikas, Sutta Pitika, Vinaya Pitika, all those things. I have taken data from them and I have proved that these are the Buddhist texts, these are the statements, and now you decide whether it is gender equal or gender unequal. Therefore, all religion largely have radiated such a culture which has hampered the health, which has hampered the education, which has hampered the identity of women, or have made those identities dependent on their respective counterparts. These still here I have discussed the various challenges which shows that the woman's position is secondary in Indian society. But there is economic survey which came out in the year 2015 and 16. It's not 5, make it 15 here, okay? Which shows that the woman's position is very strong. Why I'm using economic survey here is to give you a counter opinion that all is not as glim as we have discussed here. We first saw the various ground realities. Now there is a government document which talks about the position of women has women empowerment is complete in India. They completely conclude this. At least to a larger extent, this is the conclusion of this particular discussion here. This survey. Different dimensions were studied by economic survey and they came out with a comparative study. They compared the position of women in 5 and 6. They compared the woman position in 15 and 16. These are the dimensions upon which the comparisons have been made. I have made a different table here showing the percentage change. What has been the change, positive or negative? First, how many women are involved in decision about their own health? The first dimension which the economic survey measures is how many women are involved with respect to their own health. As far as the decisions of women with respect to their own bodily health is concerned or psychological health is concerned, how many women are involved in that decision? In 2015 and 16, 62% of the women said that they take the decisions about their own health by themselves. The decisions are not influenced by others or outsiders. That outsider matlab outside her. As far as 15 and 16, that percentage went back, increased by 12%. This clearly shows that means nearly 75% of women in India today are taking decisions about their own health. In how many women are involved in decision about large household purchase? If the family is purchasing any large asset, be that house, car, land, or any such equipments, are women consulted? 5 and 6, 53% women said yes, we are also consulted. 15 and 16, that percentage went back to 73. 20% increase in 10 years. And that's not a small by any chance. How many women are involved in decisions about contraceptives? Whether the contraceptive should be used or not in their sexual or married life, are women's decision taken into account? 5 and 6, 93%. 93% of women surveyed advocated, yes, they have choice. They are, it's their decision which would be, respected by the respectful partner. In 15 and 16, it came to 91%. But again, this 2% decrease is very less. At least we can surely say that 90% of women in India take decisions whether they like to use the contraceptives or not. This means it's not about sexual pleasure. This shows a deeper factor that the women's decision of their pregnancies are taken by themselves. Because if they are taking decisions about contraceptives, it indicates empowerment of our sisters in the Indian society, showing that the women are today taking decisions. They are not getting forced upon by their respective male counterparts. And that's a very big achievement here. Wife beating is not acceptable. Does wife accepts the beating of their husband? This is something which is a sad story here. Why? 2005 and 6, 50% women largely said no, not acceptable. But at the end, other 50% believes that yeah, it's acceptable. It's okay for the husbands to beat. 15 and 16, the number did not increase drastically. Only a 3% increase when compared to such a double-digit increase here. That means even today, nearly 50% women still believe, yeah, there could have been changes in next 10 years, suppose if a data comes sometime. But yet 50% women still believes, 50% of my sisters in my society believes that it's okay for their husbands to beat them. What could be the possible reason? I'll give you one reason here. Read this statement. Land ownership and its lack of it is the most important or most important. It's one of the reason why women empowerment has not taken place. Many times women often are dependent on their husband. Many times the parents of the girl themselves says, it's your life after marriage, please manage yourself. If you are facing anything, please handle by yourself. Parents भी साथ छोड़ देते हैं. And this can be debatable whether it's good or bad. She's again now dependent on women, as many times she's not allowed to work. Further, when the child is born, the possibility of divorce further reduces. Yes, I know that marital breakdowns are even taking place despite having children, but guys, remember, that is what you are seeing only among upper class or upper middle class. Even middle to lower classes, you will not see such aspects. It's a rare. Even today in middle class family, a divorce is a stigma. Oh, the girl is divorced. Oh, the boy is divorced. And maybe these are some of the reasons that women have largely accepted the violence. The another possible reason could be for this is that the socialization of woman is made in such a manner that she is always considered as a commodity of her husband or a wealth of her husband. And that could be again a reason where woman accepts, okay, it's okay, I've been taught this, that okay, this is acceptable norm. I saw my mom with respect to accepting the same thing, my elder sister doing the same thing, and therefore it's now my turn to accept the same thing rather than rebel against it. So there could be multiple reasons. And remember, this in itself can be a 10-marker question with respect to your Indian society, that why women accept violence. Although I cannot give one reason for this, patriarchy could be one, culture could be one, acceptance could be one, socialization could be one, lack of economic independence could be one, and sometimes fear could be another. The complicated laws could be another. So whenever you next time say this, let's see, woman is asserting herself or hers. There are certain women who have misused the laws. But remember it very clearly. These laws are largely made more pro-woman so that these 50% of women who are becoming victim, they are actually getting some easy laws which can protect them from violence. Yeah, I accept that this does not mean that those men who are becoming the victim of such laws, they does not matter. No. Today India is studying, today India is in a situation where some women are misusing the law and creating hurdles for those women who are not even having an awareness of law. And tomorrow, if the law changes because of these culprit women who act as victim, who are actually victimizing someone else, that would create havoc for at least larger of the women. And if anybody else, suppose someday watch this lecture, remember the victory which the women have gained, the process which the women have gained. It's a sincere request to all the women, though some women should not largely hamper the pace of that. Because when someone misuses, law always operates on the principles of what? Guilty should be punished, but more than that, innocent should never be punished, even if a guilty is, set free. And now, because of some culprit women, this law is getting misused, and many men often becomes a victim of it. Coming further, earning more than or equal to husbands. When seen in 2005 and 6, there were 21% of women who are earning more or equal to their husband. Again showing that woman is rising, but that percentage is still very less. 21. But what about 15 and 16? Increased almost double. 42% of women in India who were surveyed, they were earning more or equal to their husbands. But remember, I really have a serious problem here. If you see, I think this would be at the best true for the lower class occupations. And to some degree, it may be true for certain lower or middle classes. In middle class, only very few women, I believe, earns equal or more than her husband. As far as the lower classes are concerned, both are actually earning less. Suppose if a husband is earning 5,000, if wife is earning 5,500 by going for a domestic work, and if the survey then concludes this 42% here, then survey is actually trying to give us a wrong picture. In your own family, please do a survey of your kith and kins, and how many, if it is possible, how many of your respective bhabis, sisters, or anybody related in your family are earning more than their husband, where both of them are working. And you will see that this fact completely falls up. But yet, since economic survey has quoted, I'll not raise a question on this, but yes, we have seen almost 21% increase in past 10 years. Median age of childbirth, a median age at which the woman used to give birth in 5 and 6, 19 years, first child, and now it became 20 years. Although this 1 year may not look very great, but yes, this 1 year is definitely a contributing factors, because even a 1 year delay would largely act to the well-being of women at the level of education, health, and marriage. It brings a very strong change. Educated, okay, how many women are educated? 59%, 72%. This is something, this point itself largely makes me lose faith on economic survey, because the point is, as far as the census is concerned, we would often see that somewhere around 65 to 70% of the women are educated, literate. From where is this fact coming? I mean, suddenly 2011 census, if you see here, and this data would be of 2011 census. Up in economic surveys, some census data is used, some survey data is used, which is not from census. This creates a compatibility between data and makes us understand that this economic survey wants to create a picture of empowerment. Employed in non-manual sector, white collar job, how many women are employed? It was 19% and it is 28%. The increase is certainly of 9 percentage point, which is definitely at least near about 1% increase every year. But yet, clearly shows that the women are majorly dominating in manual sectors, not in white collars, which reduces their potentials of reduces their potential of economic capacities, and may also largely make them dependent on their counterparts. All these factors clearly shows us till here there are empirical evidences which shows that the woman's is something which is, the position is very pathetic. But on the other hand, economic survey gives us a positive picture. There's only one fact which have come in negative. Almost all the facts here are purely showing improvements. Yes, it has changed. Now let's see the change which the economic survey talks about. Is that a serious empowerment in Indian society? In order to conclude that the woman is empowered in Indian society, socially empowered, social empowerment consists of following dimensions. Guys, just give me 5 minutes break. Got a serious, very bad throat. I'll again continue this just with a break of 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, guys. I hope the audio video is clear. Let's see whether the type of debate which we have done here, negatives and positives. What is the woman empowerment, and has those aspects taken to woman empowerment? Look at this diagram. Social empowerment would only happen when educational and political empowerment happens. That means, in order to empower the woman, socially empower the woman, education and political representation has to be provided. Now, what is the importance of education? Education helps in building skills and also legal awareness. The skills leads to economic empowerment, where woman is able to largely become independent, and the legal awareness helps in bringing legal empowerment, where she becomes aware about her rights and starts asserting her rights. And political empowerment would help us in bringing the representation of women when in the politics increases. It helps in largely making women-centric policies. Therefore, social empowerment of women can only take place when legal, economic, educational, and political empowerment takes place. If education is provided, but if it is not developing skills among the women, economic empowerment would not take place. We have already seen only 3.4% of the women are having any vocational training. Legal awareness, the laws may be framed. If the women are not aware about those rights, those laws, then again the legal empowerment would not take place. That means just providing education would not lead to economic empowerment. The education has to be in a manner which largely helps in enhancing the skills, and just framing laws are not sufficient. The laws also has to be women centric, where the women are having awareness of the laws and rights which she can use in her lifetime in order to protect her or in order to make her life more progressive. Now let's look what is the way forward in order to bring all these, because in reality the economic survey is not talking about the skills or legal awareness or even the political representations. All the three aspects have been completely ignored. At the best, to some extent, economic empowerment in the forms of equal wages or equal salaries with a husband, and these dimensions more or less miss. There are only two aspects which are connected to economic survey which mentions this: increase in literacy or increase in equal salary with respect to husband. But the survey is completely silent with respect to skill, with respect to right awareness. As we see, 50% of the women still accept women violence despite having domestic violence act, other forms of act, sexual harassment at workplace act, and this is completely silent. The survey has not even touched this. That means survey have selectively used data in order to largely generate a picture of complete women empowerment in society. And if such a data is given by the government of India itself, this selective use of data is made by the government of India itself, there is a serious lacunae present in our policies, which is trying to create a manufactured image, which may in long term impact the process of social empowerment by creating a feeling or euphoria of empowerment, rather than making empowerment a realistic and empirical aspect of our day-to-day lives of our sisters in the Indian society. Then what could be the way forward? There are certain content which I've written here, that in any day, suppose if an essay comes, suppose if a question in paper one appears, or in your respective optionals, if there is a question with respect to the woman's position and empowerment, these data can be very well used. Women develop to women led development. The first thing which we should take in order to largely bring social empowerment of women is, we have only focused on developing women by giving them rights, by giving them reservations, but we have never focused on empowering the woman by making women as an agent of development. Women led development has to be the focus rather than just mere development of women. As development of women at the best would bring structural change, women-led development would also help in bringing structural and ideological change, which is a prerequisite for women empowerment in Indian society or beyond Indian society. Yojana, September 2016, there was some data with respect to women empowerment. What could be the way forward? This data can be again used to enhance the visibility of your answer. The process of empowerment is political process because it aims at changing the existing power relationship between men and women. From this, we get a clear point that empowerment, social empowerment of women cannot fully take place till the political empowerment is taking place, because women empowerment process involves changing the existing power equations, and in order to change the existing power equations, we have to first bring women in the positions of power, who only then can change the existing power equations of society. Women empowerment requires not just change in gender relationship, but in all hierarchical relationship. Second point which we gain from this as far as a way forward is, just focusing on gender inequality is not sufficient. At the same time, the government has to focus on other hierarchies which propels these gender inequalities. For example, reforms in caste, reforms in religion, reforms in economics, reforms in laws. There are various other aspects which have to be taken care of. because the reality of gender inequality is such that this ideology is radiated by multiple structures in Indian society. Those structures have to change. Structures has to be reformed if the reform of gender inequality to gender parity, if ever, has to become a lived reality of people in our society. The Hindu, there was a content of women empowerment which can be used here. Focus on basic need deficit, fulfill the basic needs of women. Resource deficit, provide resources and finance to women. Infrastructure deficit, develop infrastructures where the women can largely further develop their capacities. Could be education, could be skill training, could be vocational training, could be STEM science research. Trust deficit, also build the psychological confidence among the women and among the men as well, to trust women with respect to the development. Many times, I'll give you a very, very lived example of our day to day life. Many times, when a car is driven by a woman, many of us men often say, I knew this, it's a woman driver. We have largely labeled women drivers as unsafe. That, I got it. Many times you would have come across, I hope you have understood the point which I'm trying to make here. These four deficits have to be taken care of if ever the women empowerment should become progressive and a complete qualitative exercise in Indian society. Involvement of men is important for women empowerment as women exerts pressure. Means just focusing and changing the mindset of women is not sufficient. Even the mindset of men has to be changed. Only then such trust deficits can be overcome. Focus on agriculture. Why? Because you have already seen that roughly 64% of women are involved in agriculture. The women who are working are involved in agriculture. This means agriculture policies are present in India, but within this agriculture, there have to be specific policies catering to the interest of women farmers. But unfortunately, I have not witnessed even a single policy with respect to agriculture where a focus is given on women farmers. There is high time that we need to largely focus on agriculture as well in order to empower women. McKinsey says 75% of women are employed in agriculture. There's another fact which I've discussed, 64%. These variation exists because of different data sets and different sample surveys. But let's see, 70% even if woman is employed in agriculture, then there is an important need to develop women specific policies in agriculture in order to improve their positions. And if the 75% women's position is improved, there is a possibility we can largely improve overall well-being of the sisters present in our society. Implementing national policy on women 2016, it is still a draft. This policy is not yet seen the light of the day. It is still in a draft situation. I've written the policy here. I just request you to go through these policy. Now, what is the importance of this? It may be a draft, but the points mentioned here can be used in order to largely suggest way forward that what measures India should take in order to empower the ladies of India or the women of India or the girls of India. Multiple steps are suggested here. I'll read them at a faster pace. Please do go through this PPT once you are done with the lecture. Emphasize on single women, elderly and migrant women. Special attention has to be given to them. They are more vulnerable. Welfare to right-based approach. Just don't give them doles, give them skills. Norms of gender budgeting. In budgeting, gender aspect has to be included. Certain funds has to be fixed for gender empowerment or women-centric funds has to be generated. Recognizing cybercrime. Cybercrime today is becoming one of the important forms of violence like that of cyberbullying, pornography, child pornography, etc. In that circumstances, a focus has also to be on cybercrime as well. Gender sensitization to reduce patriarchal mindsets. From school level till the level of work spheres, there has to be some gender sensitizing officers who can largely help the company or the school or the students or the teachers to become more sensitive towards the other gender. Implementing gender transformative health strategy which shifts the focus on family planning to male sterilization. At present, Population policy focuses on sterilization majorly. We need to focus on family planning, which also largely has to further a shift has to be there from female to male, male to female, female to male sterilization. Right now, within sterilization, female sterilization is emphasized, despite male sterilization being much more easier exercise, and it also a reversible exercise, but still male do not get themselves sterilized. It is always the woman of the house who actually gets sterilized. Raising gross enrollment ratio of girls in the primary schools as well as in the secondary and higher schools. Engaging men and boys to instill respect for women. We need to largely change the mindsets of boys and men as well. Example, taxi and auto drivers in Delhi. What I mean here, this is my personal example here. You often see in many taxis and autos, behind those taxis and autos, there is often written, this driver respects women. That is a change of mindsets which we are trying to bring among the larger population and also among the men in the society. Showing them that the masculinity is not on the basis of your chest, not determined on the basis of your chest hair or your beard or your mustache. The masculinity of a man today should be determined on the basis of the respect which he gives towards the woman in society. Time-bound trials of heinous crimes. The policy says fast trials of heinous crimes has to be taken. Further, focus has to be given on narrowing wage gaps, gender parity in wage, increasing participation of work. Women's participation in work has to be increased, but the focus here has to be on primary jobs. I am adding to this. Increasing participation in politics, increase the participation in politics, creating entrepreneurial opportunities for women by giving them sufficient fundings, promoting their startups, recognizing unpaid opportunities. Many times the domestic work also has to be recognized. There is in Tamil Nadu a debate with respect to recognition of domestic work started by the party of Kamal Hassan, today supported by the existing ruling party as well. Providing provision for paternal leaves. Even the men has to be given leave in order to largely participate in that process where he also participates equally with the woman of the house while socializing or taking care of the young ones. Now the point is, there are several measures we have highlighted. What could be the basis of women empowerment? I have highlighted the fact of Yojana. I have highlighted the fact of the Hindu. I have highlighted the fact of the government policy, and there are multiple points here. These are some of the steps which you can take in order to empower the woman. But now let's look into what would happen from empowerment. I mean, is really empowerment so important? There are certain facts which will give you an importance, which will make you understand the importance of empowerment. That why women empowerment is not just important to ensure gender equality, it has benefits beyond just tackling inequality. Now, what are those benefits? Again, I have given a justification by quoting the reports and organizations here. UN Special Report on Right to Food 2017. This report says ensuring women empowerment is the most cost-effective way to ensure food security. United Nations says that if you empower the woman, that is the most cost-effective measure of ensuring food security. Why? When the woman is empowered, she will be more aware. She would be more aware about the right food, right hygiene, the right gap between the childbirths, etc. And that would also enhance the food security of the youngs upon whose demographic dividend the country is relying strongly today. Supreme Court says development is only possible with the empowerment of women. And if Supreme Court says, definitely there has to be some essence. And in reality also, if the 50% of the population is not empowered enough, then their participation would be restricted and the entire burden of growing economy would fall in the shoulders of men who constitutes other 50%. IMF says that the GDP of India would increase by 27% if the woman reaches to the decision-making positions in the organizations. Right now, the women are largely present in the lower grades of occupations or lower rungs of their respective organizations. Only very few women reaches to the decision-making positions of society. Now, IMF says if women are present at decision-making positions, there is a strong possibility that the GDP of India would increase by 27%. Remember here, 27% is not that GDP would become 27%. God damn, that's impossible. Yeah, to be very frank, it's impossible, at least in the existing circumstances, and at least in 500 years down the line. I don't think 27% GDP growth per annum would be there. What it means? Whatever may be the GDP of country, let's assume if it is 10%, 8% or 7%, that's 27% of 7% would increase. That means somewhere around, if it is 10%, my maths is weak, 27% of 10% would largely be 2.7% somewhere around. That means 2% GDP would increase if women reaches to that, and that is an enormous value. It goes in trillions, or if not trillions, billions for sure and certainly. Therefore, women empowerment is an immediate requirement as far as the Indian society is concerned, because the economic contribution, the social development which this process contributes is much more cost effective than any specific measures taken with respect to adolescent health, poverty, development, health, education. This is a more holistic mechanism to ensure overall development in any society. Now, there are certain issues which I've highlighted here with respect to women. Why these issues? Because there are many times questions on women violence, dowry, or any other aspects which may come. You should have that content here in order to understand these topics which can constitute 250 word mark question in your paper 1. Sometimes these topics in itself can become an essay topic. The first topic which I want to discuss here is women violence. What are the various types of women violence? If you see manifest violence, physically it can be seen. Latent violence, which cannot be seen but yet can be felt. As per United Nations, women make up 49% and girls 23% of all the victims of trafficking, Facebook depressions, etc. That means very strong percentage of the people who are victimized, a lot of them are women in society, roughly 50% or roughly around 25%. UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women 1993 defines women violence. And now what is that women violence? Any act of gender-based violence that results in physical, sexual, psychological harm, including threats of such acts, deprivations, liberty, etc., occurring in private or public life. Such a broad definition of women violence, which takes into account physical, sexual, and psychological aspects. And even not just actions, even threat of that would be considered as a violence. I am not defining this. United Nations have defined this in the year 1993. Let's look into some of the facts with respect to women violence in India. See the facts. United Nations says, Human Rights Commission says 53% of children faced some form of sexual abuse. It may not be purely women violence, but yet there is a possibility that there should be a huge number of girl child who would often become the victim of such child abuse. Second, as per Gender Social Norm Index 2021, developed by United Nations Development Population, 28% of population thinks it justified for man to beat his wife. UN says in the context of entire world, 28% of the population believe, wives or the girls believe, women's, it's okay for their male part to beat them, be their brother, father or husband. If you go to economic survey, somewhere around 50%, that is 52% are not accepting, somewhere around 48% still accepts. That means the number in the entire world is also very huge, not just in India. National Crime Record Bureau, crime against women have pendency rate of 91%. Now I hope why you would be agreeing with the national policy on women that fast trial courts has to be there. Not only the pendency is high, the conviction rate is absurdly low. Only 30% are convicted. 70% are by izzat bari. They are left free. The last one, National Bar Association survey. The survey which was conducted in 2017. 70% of women do not report sexual harassment faced at workplace due to fear of repercussions. Now, in the last point, we are not talking about abuse or sexual abuse by husband. We are talking about sexual harassment faced at workplace by a stranger, your colleague. 70% women, and I can certainly say at least many of those women would also be educated who are working. And if these educated women, that is roughly 70% of these women, are not even reporting. Why? Because of fear of repercussions, job losses, family restrictions. Honor would be lost, wages would be deprived, she would be thrown out of the jobs. This shows that the way the woman violence is present in Indian society is not just a crime, but it can be considered as crime against the entire woman or humanity. See the statement in the box. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, what he says: gender inequalities that fuel rape culture are essentially a question of power imbalance. He has given you a very good reason why this woman violence exists. This is because of power imbalance present. When men is considered more powerful, they often assert themselves in by using different forms of violence. Now, what are the causes of violence? The statement which I've written here in blue, this is my personal understanding. Violence against women cannot be an individual act of machismo. Rather, it is deeply imbibed in the social value system of a society. That means woman violence is not because of individual masculinity or its assertion. Rather than the violence in women exists because society has accepted the violence. I have highlighted some of the primary causes. First one, rising economic mobility of women leads to assertion of women, and which many times cannot be digested by men, often resulting into different forms of exploitation, especially sexual harassment at workplace. Second, mercantilization of marriage. Marriage today is no more sacred. It has become completely commodified. And as a result, marriage is considered as an instrument to become more mobile, more rich. And when the dowry or the money does not come through this marriage, many times many women often becomes the victim of such violence. Weak and delay implementation of law. Although the weak laws today may not be a situation in India today, the laws are very stringent with respect to women violence. But the second aspect of weak implementation is still present, as these laws are not implemented properly. The fact reveals itself here that 70% pendency cases, 91% pendency rate is present, and 30% cases are only convicted. Assertion of women which is not tolerated. Yes, many times when woman asserts, that toleration of that assertion is not taken well or does not go well down with the male social groupings, often resulting into different forms of violence, could be psychological, sexual, or physical abuse. Media. Some to an extent, media is also responsible for women violence. Why? Because many times media vulgarize women by creating or equating them to sexual toys or sexual commodities. Next, erosion of values. In contemporary time, many of our existing traditional Indian values have eroded. Earlier, when the joint family system was present, women did not enjoy an empowered position, but at the same time, women largely did not become a victim of violence as well. Why? Because the joint family system provided a support structure to women, which largely and further at the same time, it also controlled the male or men of their families, and creating value systems where the women largely were not to be violated. Many times people say that the traditional Indian values were orthodox. I'll give you a very good example. Maybe the orthodoxy would have been present. But in Indian society, we also saw that there was always a belief systems ke औरतों पे हाथ नहीं उठाते हैं. Whenever you are discussing Indian society, my request is to discuss it from a more pragmatic viewpoint. Just selectively highlighting orthodox values would be difficult and would give a wrong impression. There are also values present in traditional Indian societies which shows respect, reverence, and humility, compassion towards the gender, humans, animals. Do highlight those values as well. But here, obviously, we do see that traditional value norms, when they get eroded, women becomes more vulnerable to different aspects of violence in modern society. Socialization of boys. One of the primary reasons which I really consider is that women violence is also the result of the very socialization in which the boys are largely very boys, the way in which they are socialized. Boys are always socialized in a manner that, okay, they are masculine, they have to assert, and as a result, over a period of time, they even assert on their respective wives, sisters, or mothers. Last one, acceptance of violence by society. As I said in the initial part of this lecture as well, when I started this topic of women violence is there because society accepts it. If the acceptance does not exist, then there would be definitely punishment, and that would definitely deter such activities of violence, be that psychological or physical. What are the steps which have been taken by Government of India with respect to tackling the extreme issues of women violence? Why I'm saying extreme issues of women violence? Because these are the facts which you have already seen. Many of our government records says this. What are the steps which we have already taken? Criminal Law Amendment 2013, on the basis of J.S. Verma Committee, new offences were added: acid attack, stalking, etc. in IPC, which earlier were not existing. POSCO Act 2018 amendment, death penalty for rape of a child below 12 years and life imprisonment if victim is less than 16 years. And here the child is gender neutral. It could be boy or a girl as well. Juvenile Justice Act 2015 amended, and a provision made for treating a child below 16 to 18 years of age as adult if the offence is heinous. Delhi rape case, Nirbhaya case, we did see that one was a juvenile, but now this amendment is there which shows that if any juvenile conducts a heinous crime like a raping a woman or any such act, then that person would not be tried under JJ Act, Juvenile Justice Act. He would be tried under CRPC and IPCs as an adult. Dowry Prohibition Act has been framed, sati prohibition, domestic violence prohibition, sexual harassment at workplace 2013 on the Vishaka guidelines radiated from Supreme Court judgments. Coupled with this, she boxes, there are many electronic governance mechanisms like she boxes have been created where women can electronically complain of a sexual harassment. There are many different types of apps has been created in order to largely help women in a difficult circumstances when she thinks that she is now, the chances of her violation may exist. This clearly shows there are multiple actions which have been taken by the government, and there are multiple actions taken by the state governments as well. Disha Act, Andhra Pradesh, that a trial of a woman woman violence incident has to be completed within 60 days, and the charge sheet has to be filed in a court within the span of 60 days. Certainly this is a good step, but not completely, because this would enhance the rate of conviction, because the proceedings would be quite fast. Many times the conviction hampers because the charge sheets are delayed and the evidences are lost. All these steps clearly shows there are measures taken. There is another measure which is taken, National Data Bank of Sexual Offenders. A data bank has been created so that we can identify repeat offenders, and there could be a possibly parading of these people if any such incident happens in the areas where they often live. J.S. Verma Committee also gave certain recommendations that can help you to suggest way forward. What are those recommendations? Criminalizing marital rape. There is a recent Supreme Court ruling on this. We'll come to that. Given by our present Chief Justice Chandrachud sir. Gender sensitization of police should take place. CCTV vigilance should be there. Impart sexual education in schools. These are the measures suggested by J.S. Verma Committee in order to tackle the issue of frequent women violence in India. All these measures can be utilized in order to show a way forward with respect to the provision of how to reduce women violence. Coming further, criminalizing marital rapes. Rajput Committee, United Nations Committee on elimination of discrimination against women. What I'm trying to say here, there are certain examples who have recommended that marital rape should also be criminalized. But as of now, this is not a criminal offense in India. Now, what exactly this marital rape is? There could be an independent question on your Indian society, or in governance as well, that should marital rape be criminalized? What exactly is marital rape? Let's dwell into this issue in more detail. Marital rape is a rape of a wife by her husband. That husband forces on wife, and as far as present circumstances is concerned, this is not considered as a marital rape. But if an incident takes place where woman is not married and someone else has forced herself him on someone else has forced himself on her, then that would be a rape. Position at present not considered as rape under IPC. That exception 2 under section 375 of IPC removes marital rape from ambit of rape. You don't have to remember the sections. The only point you need to remember is that marital rape is not considered as rape in India as of now. Now let's look into the certain aspects or certain happenings which happened, certain developments which happened here. Supreme Court decision. September 30, 2022. I've given you this timeline so that you can trace exactly when it happens. Sexual assault by a man on his wife can take the form of rape. Court says that. Why Supreme Court took such a stand? What was the reasons given? Woman suffers unwanted pregnancy because of that. That is a form of violence, forced pregnancies. The misconception that strangers are only responsible sexual violence is misplaced, as it creates inequality between married and non-married women. MTP Act 1971 recognizes husband's act of sexual assault or forced intercourse as rape. They give 3 reasons कि POSCO के अंदर this is recognized as a rape. Further, woman is suffering through mental and physical illness, and therefore court says sexual assault by a man on his wife can take a form of rape. Although the amendment has not been made in IPC, but suppose if somebody goes to court, there is a possibility that Supreme Court will not consider that as a rape, but there is a possibility they may largely dwell, and tomorrow they may give a directive to the government to modify IPC and consider marital rape as a rape. Justice Chandrachud, what exactly he said? The said exception is only a legal friction. The exception, which exception we are talking about? This exception. He said that this is a legal friction. This is creating conflicts. In reality, it should be equated to rape as well. He was a justice then, now he is a chief justice. Now I just leave on you whether the marital rape should be criminalized or not. And suppose if you ask me, sir, what exactly is your stand with respect to marital rape? Should it be criminalized? Okay. I personally believe that yes, at present, the marital rape exception is creating an inequality between the women themselves. A married woman getting raped by her own husband is not equal to rape, but if a married woman gets if she is violated by outsider, then it's a rape. And this creates a distinction between married, unmarried, and who is involved in rape or not. In reality, if you see, marital rape certainly requires a rethought. But the problem is, laws are not made on emotions. Tomorrow there is a possibility, just like the act of dowries have been misused by women, the same act of marital rape may be misused by women, punishing the husband. Just before 5-6 days, there was a news in the newspaper where a particular woman, married woman, had children. She goes to a gym. She develops an extramarital affairs with the gym rat in the sense that particular coach of that gym. And both of them largely have a good life. And they suddenly plan to kill the husband of the lady. And they also, first they go for an accident, husband loses the legs, and then somehow they also kill the husband by giving a supari or a contract to a contract killer. Husband dies. They live a lavish life. They even go to Australia, live there, so on and so forth. Finally, the brother of the husband somehow gets a doubt, and he complains, and finally both of them get caught. Imagine if marital rape would have been a provision, this lady would have put a false case against the husband with respect to this, and he would be in jail for no reason. They might have a consensual sex, but still, the lady may criticize and put a charge that husband raped her. How would you prove that? Think about it. Is there any mechanism? In such a circumstances, all the husbands would become vulnerable. Why? Before developing a physical intimacy with their respective wives, they would have to largely get it in return that, okay, this is a consensual sex. What exactly are we trying to do? I agree that marital rape is something which is definitely many women become victims of this, but just because of that, it's not just, sorry to say that, but because of that, if you now want to criminalize marital rape, go ahead, do it, but you should also develop clear cut procedures so that the victimization of husband does not take place. Because in reality, if you do this, you would have only transferred the victimization from women to men, as many would misuse. Oh, sir, how pessimistic you are being. That women would misuse? No, I am not being pessimistic, my dear friend. The reality is that. Oh, sir, who the hell are you to say about the reality? I'll give you an example of Supreme Court. Supreme Court, in the context of dowry, said that the law of dowry should have was given to act like a shield to women, but women have used the law of dowry as a weapon, indicating dowry law has been misused to target husbands and in-laws rather than protecting herself. If the dowry is misused, imagine the misuse of marital rape, to what extent it can go. Therefore, till the time we do not have an adequate procedure, rules in place to really identify whether the relationship, the physical intimacy developed was consensual or a rape, criminalizing marital rape in such circumstances would be questioning the sanctity of marriage relationships in India. There is a possibility that people may stop marrying because even a single misuse would demotivate crores and lakhs of people. And this is a serious challenge in the contemporary societies. Coming to the next topic called as dowry, I hope this analysis has helped you to write an answer with respect to marital rape. I would not accept marital rape as a rape till the time the laws are framed in a manner which protects the woman and wife and husband both. Just on the pretext of protecting the wife, sacrificing the sanctity of husband, that is something which law should never be doing. Coming to the dowry, my simple question is, would you take dowry? Almost all of you would definitely say no. Anybody can also comment it here, that are they ready to take dowry? Maybe there is a possibility someone may just say yes for the sake of comment, but in reality, then you would be doing a criminal offense in India. Now let's see dowry and some of the facts which are present. If you look into the facts of dowry, NCRB 8,500 deaths due to dowry per annum. State with highest dowry death reported greatest decline in sex ratio. A very important point which you should frame it in your mind and keep it there forever. Wherever the dowry deaths is high, sex ratio is less, people do not give birth to girl child. Dowry payment in India's villages have been largely stable over the past few decades, World Bank study has found. That means nothing much have changed despite prohibition of dowry. World Bank study says the payments are more or less stable. Things have not changed to a greater extent. Researchers looked at 40,000 marriages that took place in rural India between 1960s and 2008. They found that dowry was paid in 95% of the marriages, and even thought it's being illegal even though it has been illegal in India since 1961. 95% marriages involves the exchange of dowry. Where the hell is law operating? The study also found that dowry was prevalent in all major religious groups. Nobody was an exception. Therefore, dowry, which was completely a cultural aspect present only in Hindu society, today it's a practice which is present in almost all the religion. A survey clearly says that, which has studied 40,000 marriages, not 4 or 400 marriages. Interestingly, Christians and Sikhs showed a striking increase in dowry, leading to higher average dowries than Hindus and Muslims. I mean, Sikhs and Christians had no concept of dowry, but still, this is the highest. Dowry is highest among these communities when compared to Hindus and Muslims. Hindus had a cultural practices, but these religion did not have any such cultural practices. They are now taking the highest forms of dowries. What are the causes of dowry? There are multiple causes of dowry. I have analyzed the causes of dowry here from a very, very deeper perspective, talking about the social factors, emphasizing on them, and discussing them. The first one, production of Hindu culture. Yes, may not be today, but yes, in the earlier times, the dowry in itself was the result of Hindu cultural practices. But this statement today is not sufficient, because today dowry has less to do with culture. It has more to do with materialism. Therefore, I personally believe that this is not the primary reason of dowry today anymore. Second, parental love. Many times the father or the parents of the girl largely gives the dowry as a form of parental love. This shows that many times the groom may not demand dowry, but the fathers want or insist on taking those so-called gifts, because that's a love towards their daughter. Third, manifestation of consumerism. The consumerism has increased to such an extent that we often see that okay, marriage is considered as a proposal in order to gain wealth out of the groom's marriage. Recently, there was a movie called as Lapata Ladies. In that movie, you would often come across a particular aspect where you would see that how in a particular conversation those parents were talking about, okay, what exactly I've got in dowry. I've got a bike, I've got a this, I've got a phone, I've got a dash dash dash. Next, parental justice. Sometimes the parents considers giving dowry is doing justice to daughter, as majority of the wealth of the parent after their respective deaths would come to son. Therefore, dowry is that share of that father or mother's property or parent's property which is largely given to daughter as her share of property. Next, both low and high education of women is leading to dowry. Another important cause in dowry today is the education of women. This point is specifically taken from the Hindu's analysis. Once an editorial appeared here, what it says, the editorial was comparing the rate of dowry in Haryana and Kerala. They say that in Kerala, if the woman is not educated, the dowry she pays is high. But on the other hand, in Haryana, if a woman is highly educated, then she pays high dowry. Why? Because in Kerala, the grooms want educated wives. Therefore, those wives who are not educated, they would have to compensate their lack of education by giving dowry. But in Haryana, since it's an agrarian economy, people here prefer the wife who are less educated. And if a girl is more educated, she would have to give dowry in order to get married in that state. This clearly shows there is a stark variation. It clearly shows that the opinion that the education is high, the dowry would be less, is not applicable to many of the societies like that of Haryana here. Next, delayed marriages. Many times today, when the women are becoming more career oriented, delaying their marriages because of education and economics. Now, after a particular age, if woman wants to get married, she would have to give high dowry because of her late marriage. Impact of dowry. So these are some of the broad causes of dowry. What does the dowry, what is the impact of dowry on the society at large? Dowry leads to poverty. We often see that lack of dowry or giving dowry largely is done on the basis of where the fathers often take loans from money lenders and enters into that vicious circles of poverty. Often many of the Bollywoodians movie are often reviewing reflections of these ideologies. Delay in marriages. If you're not able to give dowry, your marriages would be delayed, and as the marriage gets delayed, the amount of dowry only increases over a period of time. Raju Rastogi's sister in Three Idiot, and that particular scene is a very good example here. Commodification. Dowry clearly ends up creating women as a commodity in society. Modern sati. M.N. Srinivas calls dowry as a form of modern sati, as if you fail to pay dowry, many times you often become the victims of certain accidents like that of cylinder ka fat jana. Failure leads to violence. If you are not paying dowry, then there is a possibility that the girl may become victims of different forms of violence in the in-laws house. But is dowry having any positive impact? Do you agree? Do you really see dowry is having any positive impact? This may not suit to your Indian society, but yeah, definitely a very important analysis by various sociologists. That's the reason sociology is one of the best optional, which gives you a wide variety of understanding. Oh, come on, I'm not selling my optional here. I'm just giving you, it gives you a deeper analysis of things. Now, what it means, yes, dowry does have certain positive impact, but please make sure that I'm not justifying dowry here. I'm just trying to give you a more broader analysis, because many sociologists takes into account both positives and negatives here. If you look into one positive impact, many times it is often seen that the girl who brings dowry, heavy, hefty dowry, to the in-laws house, their status is also increased over a period of time. They have more respect in the in-laws house. But remember, this is a subtle impact here, okay? Please make sure that we are not justifying dowry whenever you write this point. It should be presented in a manner that shows that you're not justifying dowry. You're just trying to highlight that could be certain repercussions which can help subtly to improve the positions of women in their respective in-laws family. Now, what are the steps taken by Government of India with respect to dowry? Dowry Prohibition Act, but you know it well. Survey says 95% of the marriages still are engaging in dowry. Steps to empower the woman. There are also certain policies made in order to in order to empower the woman. Example, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, awareness campaigns. Many campaigns have been undertaken in order to largely ensure that the dowry is not adhered by, or something which dowry is not asked by the groom's family. Has the law worked? I've already given you a fact. 95% of the marriage even today are exchanging dowry. Now, Supreme Court statement, I've written it here, which I read to you in the context of marital rape. Supreme Court says the law have been misused. How? The law of dowry should have been used like shield, but in reality, the law of dowry is used like a weapon. Law must retain its progressive tilt towards women without wronging men. Mark this statement with 500 star marks. Any question which related to gender and law comes, this statement would give you the best possible way forward in your answers. Whatever law you're framing, please keep in mind, just in order to punish the wrongdoers or to provide protection to women, one should not consider, the law should not wrong men in society. I'll repeat, law must retain its progressive tilt. Yes, pro-women laws are needed towards women without wronging men, but the care should be taken that the men should not become victims of these laws. Just like they became victim of prohibition of dowry, many times fake cases are registered against, and almost every year you see hundreds and thousands of cases where the in-laws are put up behind bars, the husband is put up behind bars, they in-laws and husband are socially stigmatized, and the consequences are much more broader today, where we see they are also socially boycotted because of this social media platforms who do not verify facts. They only just give you their opinions. Almost every social media account holder today acts like a Supreme Court judge, trying to give his or her opinion without ever looking into one's life, how many violations he or she has made. They are so judgmental. Almost everybody, in fact many of you would have also done the same. In fact, I would have also done the same. No, I have not done the same, ever, ever, ever. I'm not a judge, but many people today do that. In many of these YouTube videos, when we often upload, there are nonsensical comments often present there. I mean, just imagine, Look at the level of those people. Yeah, many could be of rickshawalas there. Many would not even know the full form of UPSC there. But yet, those are the people who largely put up, without seeing the entire lecture, they'll put up their comment in just 5 seconds, whether they like it or not. Ah, and this is problematic. People are getting victimized, socially stigmatized, just because a woman stands doesn't mean that woman is always right. Believe me, yaar, I have seen so many wrong women in my life. Blaming, because I have done my law as well. I have seen many fake cases. On face value, you can say that she is faking it out. It's a complete fake case. But still, you often see law takes the sides of women. Should that stop? No. The answer lies here. Progressive tilt of law should not be hampered, but at the same time, men should not be wronged. I am not saying this. Supreme Court is saying you can write a petition to Supreme Court and can ask why they say this. Issues related to women's low participation in work. So I've covered two more issues with women empowerment. One, women violence I have covered. Second, dowry I have covered. And third, marital rape. Now the next issue I want to cover here is this. All these issues can be 10 marker questions here. I want to give you the detailed content here so that no issue of women is left beyond your path. You are in a position with writing answer with all facts possible. Fact, as per NSSO, urban में the participation of women in economic activities 26 to 28%, rural 44%, 2011 it was 44%, 1987 it was 57%. What the hell are we seeing here? The participation of women in rural India in economics was much more higher in 87. It's almost 57. It was 44% in 2011. Why? One primary reason for this is that when technology entered rural areas, women went back to their home as technology replaced women. I'm not saying this. Lakshmi Menon, Nivedita Menon have conducted studies on relationship between technology and women labor. And they come out with a conclusion that with the rise of technology, women are the one who get first replaced by technology. But you and I often say what? Technology leads to empowerment of women. Where the hell is that empowerment here? This is how you should have your content. This is the depth at which you should understand your content. Low in urban and fell in rural, despite high economic growth in India, high education, fall in fertility, rise in female literacy. Despite so much improvement, the participation is falling. It's absolutely low. It's falling here in urban area. Causes for low work participation rate in women. What are the factors which hinders the participation of women in any work or economic activity? I've tried my level best to write some of these causes so that you can tackle any 250 word marker question. If a question comes, discuss the factors which are responsible for low participation of women in economic sphere. This is the answer. Work moved out of home. Now, work is not done in home, it is in factories, and women are largely because of patriarchal mindsets considered to work in home. Rise in child labor. Child labor increases, that reduces adult wages. And as a result, women are the first who are largely left out. You have seen already Bhid ka example which I gave you in Maharashtra in the starting of this lecture. Discrimination is wage. 26% disparity exists. That means the wage paid to women are less when compared to men. And because of this, I have already shown you many women then do not work. I'm not getting the same wage when compared to the men in society, and they come out of economic spheres. Rise of technology. I've already given you example here of Nivedita Menon and Lakshmi Menon, who studied the Green Revolution belt and advocated whenever the technology comes in work, women are the first who are replaced. Rise in husbands' earning. This is again a social factor. where many times earlier, both, suppose in a family, both husband and wife are working, but as the family's position improves, husband's earnings improve, it is expected from women कि वो अब क्या जरूरत है काम करने की, what is the purpose of working now, we are earning well, leave your job. And as a result, many women are forced to leave their jobs by choice or by circumstances. Safety concerns. Many women largely do not work because there are often becoming victims of violence in public sphere. And maybe this is the reason you will often see in the recent time there has been rise in women's employment in those spheres which are more safe, maybe underpaid. Women today prefers those jobs which are considered more safer when compared to more economically beneficial. And that's the reason women are dominating in banks. Go to any bank, you would see majorly women present there. Why? Bank is the most safest place. You are always under CCTV vigilance. Legal laws. Many times, cap law is a particular person. Many times, the laws themselves, which are made to empower women, they become the primary factors for women's subordinations. For example, the laws today largely make it compulsory for organization to provide crèche services, menstrual leaves, etc. And as a result of this, these all things have extra cost on companies, and because of this, they stop preferring women. They give more employment to men, so that all these provision need not be adhered by. So therefore, laws which were made for the welfare of women many times are often responsible for their underemployment in the society. Now, another topic which I'm discussing here is startup and women. Only 6% startups are owned by women, out of which 75, that out of these 6%, 75% of the startups are funded by self, not by outside or state fundings. Women in startups. Causes for low women participation in startups. Why? In recent, chalo, we see that the women's participation in jobs may be less. But what about in recent times? The startup economy is a budding economy in the country. Would that help in empowering the woman? No. Only 6% startups are women. Second, within that, the finance is not available. Now, what are the cause that even women are not even able to get into the startup sections? Startup focuses and it is based on technology. And most of the women's education is compartmentalized and they focus on social science education. And as a result, more or less, they do not have that right educate skills of technologies and they cannot start a startup in a progressive manner. Low women participation in science due to compartmentalization of education. Low skills. Many women may largely have low skills because they would have to take break from their respective jobs many times because of pregnancies or childbearing or some family responsibilities or caregiving economies. Lack of access to technology. 42% of the women's lack access to even feature 4. National Family Health Survey 4 का fact है ये. This fact shows 42% women in India are not even having access to feature phone, forget about smartphone. How can then they would enter into the ecosystem of technology? Lack of finance. 75% of the women startups are financed by their own earnings. And we all know the earnings of women are less as their engagement in occupations are at secondary level, and further even in the primary level, if primary occupations are at which the women's present, their funds are more used by the family than they having their own decisions to use their fund. Therefore, all these factors have together contributed for the low participations of women even in the startup ecosystems, which talks about creating jobs rather than becoming a job seeker in society. Woman cannot become a job seeker or rarely becomes a job seeker because her career gets impacted because of the family life and discriminations and harassment faced at workplace. We thought that when the startups would come, women themselves would provide the jobs, but even that is looking bleak because of the various conditions present in Indian societies, which somehow is prohibiting. But yet, the startup ecosystem is a silver lining in Indian society. Today, there are challenges, but in times to come, the women themselves would become the generator of jobs and largely may create a possibility of preferring women there in order to largely provide them a more mobile life in society. Digitalization and women empowerment. There's this specific article which I read in a journal, and I just wanted to share here some facts of organizations. Okay, what is the relationship between digitalization and women empowerment? There is a possibility in GS paper 2 governance, this can be a question, and even in GS paper 1, this can be an important question. Facts. Accenture is a company. Its study says key to women empowerment lies in digital fluency. They should have a digital knowledge if they want to become an affluent sections. As per the above study, at present, the pace gender inequality will be achieved in 85 years. At present pace, if we see 85 years, mein gender parity would come. But this survey says, but if digital illiteracy pace is enhanced, the empowerment could be achieved in 45 years. That means the study of Accenture clearly shows that if the digitalization and digital literacy is stressed in women empowerment process, there is a possibility that the empowerment which is going to take 85 years from now can be achieved in almost half of those years if the digital literacy and digital technologies are used in order to largely enhance the pace of women empowerment. As per National Family Health Survey 5, the latest one, over 60% of women in 12 states and union territories have never used the internet. Here we saw 42% not even having access to feature phone. The latest family health survey says 60% women exist in 12 states and union territories who have not even used internet in their life. I mean, just imagine how would they take the benefits of electronic governance, laws, awareness, participations, PDS, Aadhaar, etc. They are not even using internet. Latest National Family Health Survey 5 says this. This means if this digitalization can be bought, these people can be integrated into the governance mechanism, and that would bring them legal awareness, economic empowerment, educational literacy, and there is a possibility these platforms today can be used by these women in order to enhance their skills, which would further propel their development in society. We Think Digital. Facebook launched it in participation with the National Commission for Women to provide digital learning training to 1 lakh women across 7 states. Corporate social responsibility, you can just equate it with. Okay, there is a project called as We Think Digital, where Facebook and National Commission for Women collaborated to provide digital training to 1 lakh women. Now, some issues related to women which have been in news from past few years. Maternal mortality rate. What is maternal mortality rate? As per the fact, this is taken from a newspaper. As per Registrar General of India 2022 fact, 103 women lose their life out of 1 lakh. 17-18 का डेटा है रजिस्ट्रार जनरल का 2022 में डिस्क्लोज किया गया, जो बोलता है कि 103 women, the maternal mortality rate in India is 103 per 1 lakh women. That means maternal mortality rate refers to the number of women losing life during their deliveries. Out of 1 lakh women who gives birth to a child, near about 103 women loses their life. This diagram shows where high, where low, where very low, etc. If you look into very low, majorly South Indian state dominates. Almost all the South India is having a low. Almost all the North India is having a high. Only one exception exists here, which talks about low rate. But if you look into the entire country, at least top and bottom, you would see difficulties. These are the states where the data is not available. Causes for high maternal mortality rate. Lancet is a journal. I'll just read out these causes. Late marriages and early marriages. Both late marriages leads to high death and early marriages leads to high death. Obesity and malnutrition. Many women are obese and many are obesity, malnutrition can be underweight and overweight. Both are malnutrition. Even obese person is malnourished. Even a person who is undernourished is malnourished. These factors are also responsible. It weakens the woman's health or compatibility with a child. over and under medication. Sometimes people are not having even basic medications, the poor woman, and sometimes the upper class and middle class women are using most modern forms of vitamins, excessively putting all those minerals, vitamins, and proteins into their body before their pregnancies in order to give a birth to Leonardo DiCaprio or Jennifer Lopez. And as a result, they largely become victim of extra nutrition. I'm not saying this. World's most renowned journal Lancet says this. Lack of institutional deliveries. Many women often give birth within their home, not in hospitals, putting the life of mother and child both at risk. Ignoring adolescent health. Many times the adolescent health of women is largely ignored. And when the adolescent health of the girl is ignored over a period of time, when she becomes victim of child marriage, the body is not suitable to give birth, but the median age of the first birth, as seen by economic surveys, 20 years. We can clearly see that the woman is at a high risk of death during this. Cultural and religious prescriptions. There are many cultural and religious prescriptions where we often see son preferences, more number of children, patriarchal mindsets, all lack of, not going for immunization. All these factors many times often also exacerbate the existing high maternal mortality rates in the societies. Another issue which has been cropping up often and often again is abortion. This would be the last topic, or I think there is one more topic beyond this. Abortion laws in India. The entire abortion debate till now is mentioned here in the PPT. You can just have a look here. Till 1916, abortion was illegal in India. You cannot abort a child. Government of India set up. This detail is just, suppose if a question on abortion comes in your examination, only the abortion topic. Shanti Lal Shah Committee was set up, which led to formulation of Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, which is well known as MTP Act. Excuse me. What is the provision in MTP Act, which was based on Shanti Lal Shah Committee? Abortion up to 12 weeks were allowed with permission of single doctor, plus permission of 2 doctors beyond 12 years up to 20 weeks. Technically, till 20 weeks, one can abort a child, provided certain conditions are fulfilled. This law later changed. A recent amendment in 2021, up to 20 weeks with a permission of single doctor, one can go for abortion. Plus, after 20 weeks till 24 weeks, certain categories of women are allowed abortions. Now, what are those categories? I mentioned in the next slide. Recent controversy. Delhi High Court rejected the petition of unmarried women for abortion after 20 weeks. But however, it was later appealed to Supreme Court, who allowed her. Now, let's see. Issues in abortion laws. MTP Act is silent on unmarried women. The MTP Act only talks about abortion of a married woman because there was a time when the childbirth only happened in marriage. But today, the child is also taking birth outside the marriage, and that's the reason Delhi High Court did not allow it, because MTP Act did not apply to her. It only applied to married women. But Supreme Court later allowed it. Right should be of women. There are 2 issues which are present. One, married and unmarried distinction should be taken care of. Second, many times women have to abort a child by taking a permission of expert opinion, doctors, and so on. People today are demanding that no, it should be the woman herself who should be deciding whether she wants to give a birth to a child or not. And they are today demanding that there should be no abortion or child limit, limit on child abortion, limit on abortions, 24 weeks, 20 weeks. No, whenever woman wants to abort a child, she should be given a freedom to abort a child. Now, my question is, should there be a limit on abortions? 24, 20, whatever week. If you look into the law of abortions, at present we are often seeing till 24 weeks abortion can be taken care of in certain circumstances. For example, survivor of a rape, if the mother is differently enabled, if the child is having deformities of such level that it may hamper the health of mother. These are some exceptions which are added here, certain categories of women who can go for abortions. Today, women throughout the world are demanding absolute abortion right. Even the WHO says that bodily autonomy of women should be respected. But in India, we see there are certain conditions for abortion which one has to fulfill. Now, whether there should be a limit on abortion or not, let's assume most of the time there are two cases which comes for abortion. One, the child is differently enabled in the womb. Second, the victim is becoming the mother is a victim of some form of harassment. The third important case which is now coming is many married people are unmarried people are engaging in some sexual activities in the forms of live-in relationships and etc. And sometimes when the girl becomes pregnant or the woman becomes pregnant, she often knocks the door. These are the three incidents where majorly abortion happens after 20 weeks. Let's be very practical here. One who is unmarried, one who is becoming a victim of sexual harassment, and third, who is the mother is having a child who is deformative and which is only coming into the picture once after 20 or 22 weeks. Now she faces a problem. Now, if mother wants to abort a child, she cannot abort a child. Should this limit be there? Women's now demand, or the feminists throughout the world, or women's movement throughout the world today are demanding the absolute right with women. Now, the counter justification which is often given is one more thing. As per United Nations Human Rights Commission, fetus does not have human rights. Remember this. Many people say that the fetus, he is also or she is also having a right. No, as per UNHRC, the fetus does not have human rights. Human rights only comes when you take birth. That one day child or 1 hour child would have a human right, but a fetus will not have a human right. Often the justification for abortion limit is that aborting a child at this stage would kill a human being as the fetus is completely developed. But if you look into UNHRC, the fetus is not having a human right. Yes, a killing of human therefore cannot be attached to it, because humans only would be considered as a human when they take a birth. And secondly, many times people say that, okay, fine, if a child is differently enabled one, that doesn't mean that one need to abort a child, because this would show a discriminatory attitude towards to a differently enabled child. It's good to hear, guys. It's really good to hear. Okay, why mother is aborting a child just because it's differently enabled? God damn, it's not just because. Why? Because when the child is born, the mother would go through psychological trauma in throughout her life by seeing her child, who may be differently enabled in different aspects. That mother would be victimized throughout her life by seeing the child. Second, the child who is differently enabled, maybe because of eye, hearing, vision, physical, mental disability. You may say today, no, sir, he also has a right. Certainly, he has a right. But would the society give him or her the true place which they give to a normal human being? Would he not be taunted in school, if not by teachers but by peer groups? Would he largely have the same basic amenities which you and I, fully abled person, enjoy? Till the time as disability is not because of disability is disability because of social labeling. Now, when a disabled child is born, many times arguments are given, they need to be protected. But in reality, in societies like ours, we often see that the child becomes victims of psychological traumas throughout his or her life. And if in a society we are not able to adequately protect the differently enabled child, till that time, the rights of abortion should be completely in the hands of women. Because that abortion may create a pain to mother and may largely create a pain to the child, but that pain would be temporary when compared to the pain through which the child would be going throughout his or her life. Just because Stephen Hawking became an exceptional person because of her disability, then let's accept Stephen Hawking did not live in India. In India, still there are many social labels attached to differently abled people. Just converting disabled to differently enabled does not lead to empowerment of differently enabled. In reality, the infrastructures, in reality, the support structures, the right healthcare structures needs to be generated and created in order to make the life of differently enabled person a really live experience worth living. Until the time we fail as a society and as a government, till that time the abortion right should be absolute, because denying an abortion right here would be definitely lead to, if you deny the abortion rights here, it would be the government of India who should then be charged for domestic violence of women, because the domestic violence on women says, Act 2006 says, physical and emotional violence is also a violence. And would that mother and child not go through those emotional and psychological traumas? Therefore, things which sounds good till they are made good, the things should largely operate in a manner which gives you the least amount of pain rather than giving you the highest amount of pain and a permanent pain throughout your life. So, this is my opinion. You may not agree with that, but yet, I personally believe we as a society have labeled differently enabled people, but we still treat them disabled. We call them differently enabled, but we treat them differently disabled people. Menstrual leave, the last topic. Menstrual leave benefit bill 2017 it came, but obviously it is now lapsed. It seeks to provide working women 2 days of paid leave every month. Applies to both private. This topic is in news from past goddamn 2.5 years. Even just before the elections, one lady called as Smriti Irani also talked about this. Applies to both private and public companies. Providing better facility for rest at workplace during menstruation. Options like work from home during the periods. The benefits are also extended to students of class 8 and above. All these benefits would be extended to 8 and above as well. Article 15 subsection 3 says, empowers state to make provision for women and children. Article 42 says, state shall make provision for securing just and human condition of work and maternity relief. Now there is a debate. Should we provide menstrual leave? Let's first look into the facts. Only 13% of girls in India are aware of menstruation before menarche. 60% miss school during their periods. 79% face low confidence during the time of their menses. Case study. Bihar, only state in India which providing 2 days leave every month to female employees since 1992. Almost 34 years, 32 years. Countries like Japan, South Korea, Indonesia all provide these leaves. Recent incidents, Zomato 10 days period leave for its female employees. Kutch, Gujarat, 66 girls were stripped to check for menstruation. Sri Shajanand Girls Institute. There is a particular girls' college where the girls were stripped to check whether they are in periods or not. Why? Because there are certain rituals, certain aspects where the women who are you're going through their periods or menses, they're not allowed. Imagine the pathetic conditions. The people, they really are insane. I mean, what the hell are they trying to do here? Should it be allowed? There are opinions on both the sides. For the people who support it, it would generate awareness, will protect the privacy, will increase work participation rate. The people who are against it, Reinforcing prevalent stereotyping. Kya? Women, see, I said you requires extra care. See, they cannot bear this pain. They will further present women in a weaker manner who requires support. Negative effect on their privacy. Technically, privacy would be more violated here because all the people in the company would be knowing how many women today are on their periods. Obviously, that may create a different scenario later on, but in the initial phase, it may also create an awkward situation. Can be constructed as a shade of benevolent privacy. It's only a benevolent privacy. Reality may this is a violation of privacy. Reduces women employment. Why? You have seen in Bhid that women were not allowed. People went for men's employment. Why? There would be different types of days, 10 days, 15 days, 20 days in an year. Leave would have to be given. They would stop employing women. It may have a negative repercussions. Cap laws. Law also reduces works participation of women. Sick leaves can be used and there no need for separate leave. The other counter argument is many companies provide sick leave. And why don't you use those sick leaves instead of having a different leave or periods? Now, what stand are you going to take? That's your personal choice. So, this was today's lecture where I have tried my level best to discuss the issue of women's social empowerment and their life in the broadest manner as possible, covering almost all the current debates details which I came across in past 1.5 to 2 years. I hope this session has helped you all, and thank you. Bye bye.